Hello and welcome back to my channel, Talented Reads. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in May. Let's get some stats out of the way. So in the month of May, I read a total of 20 books and a total of 6,224 pages. My average rating was 3.6. I read 2 ebooks and 18 physical books. For star ratings, I had 1 5-star, 5 4 stars, 11 3.5 stars, and 3 3-star books. I read 6 new releases. These are books that came out this year. 1 not so new release, which is a book that came out last year. 10 backlist books, which are books that came out 2020 or prior, and 3 ARCs, which are advanced reader copies. These are books coming out later this year. So let's get into all of the books. I'm doing a horror challenge this year in which I read a group of books associated with a specific subgenre of horror. I will do a dedicated horror wrap-up video next week for the books that I read in May for the horror challenge. So let's just run through those really quick here. There's 5 of them. First is Now You're One of Us by Asa Norman. This is about Noriko, who marries into the Shito family. And she literally marries into the family. In fact, all of them live together in one mansion. And as the book progresses, Nico decides the family is not all that they seem, and she struggles to uncover the truth before it's too late. Next is Slu Foot by Brahm. Abatha, new to a Puritan colony, becomes widowed when her husband dies under mysterious circumstances. Abatha fights for her freedom amongst the townsfolk, who are all looking to see her struggle and want to see her, want to see her downfall, I guess. Next is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin. Rosemary and her actor husband Guy move into a New York City apartment and soon become close to their elderly neighbors. Sometime later, Rosemary becomes pregnant, which she comes to realize may not be a normal pregnancy. The Ritual by Adam Neville. A group of friends decide to hike the Scandinavian wilderness and reconnect. The group, who is kind of already feeling tension on this hike, decide to take a shortcut through the woods, which we all know is a bad idea. And it soon becomes their worst nightmare. And lastly is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. Emmanuel is an outsider in a very tight-knit society, and she is struggling to learn her place and is learning why her mother was cast out. Alright, so that's it for the horror challenge books. Let's run through the ARCs that I read. First is Eletra by Jennifer Saint. Reading the synopsis here, it says, the House of Adoris is cursed. A bloodline tainted by a generational cycle of violence and vengeance. This is a story of 3 women, their fates inextricably tied to this curse, and the fickle nature of men and gods. This is the author that wrote Ariadne, which I think came out last year. Ariadne was very engaging. I really fell for the characters, and so I was excited to get this book as an art, but it just didn't get there for me. I mean, it's set during war, so of course it's heartbreaking, and the violence towards women is always hard to read, but I just didn't feel connected to the story or the characters. There was a lot of anger. The synopsis talks about the cycle of vengeance, which is a hardcore theme in the book. And there was just a lot of inner dialogue, about, oh, how I'm gonna wrong you when I get that chance. And after a while, it's just like, dude, move on. It just like wears you down, But all in all, the writing was still good. It does kind of read almost like a historical nonfiction kind of about this time. So I won this through a Goodreads giveaway, so thank you to Flatiron Books for that. Next is Outside by Radner Johansson. 4 friends decide to hike in the Icelandic Highlands, but when a sudden snowstorm strikes, they are left stranded in an abandoned lodge. Well, what they thought was abandoned. This was a pretty quick read, and I did love the isolation setting. Though I wish I would have read it during the winter, because the snowy atmosphere and the snowstorm and all that, I think almost would have been better suited for a winter release. But it was still, you still got there and were able to picture everything. I thought the tension was really good and the character mix was interesting. There was a big plot point that was really good when it was first revealed, but then it kind of fizzled out, and the final reveal was not quite as big as I was hoping for. I thought a different approach would have made a bigger impact. And I will say that there is one character in here that needs to learn to let things go. Holy moly. It was all of her point of views, at the end of the chapter, it was referencing something in the past, and it's dude. But anyways, thank you to NetGalley and Minotaur Books for the art. The Woman in the Library by Sureli Gentile. If you like books within books, this is definitely the one for you. This is ultimately about a group of people who kind of become friends and come together after they all experience a scream at the library, which ends up turning out to be a dead body. The 4 friends kind of decide to solve the mystery. The book within the book is that there's kind of alternating chapters from the author who's writing this story, and then a letter from the fan to the author with notes about what they just read. It's kind of a cool concept, but there's kind of another storyline with this fan in the letter. But I'm not really going to talk about that because I think it's better to kind of go into it blind. But I think that's ultimately what drove the rating down for me. The 2 perspectives kind of both had something going on, so it made it seem a little bit busy. And then, right when something would happen in the story, then it would cut to this person writing about stuff, and it kind of took you out of the, thrilling mystery part of the book, and all I wanted to do was just like get back into it. I would have preferred just a book about the library mystery. Plus, like, the book part is a little heavy. There's like a book being told from an author's view, but the characters in that author's book are authors themselves, and then they're talking about their stories. So it got to be like a little much, but still a good cozy mystery. Thank you to NetGalley and Poison Pen Press for this art. Alright, I did a May Flowers reading challenge with my 2 book besties, so let's run through the books I read for that. First was Breed by Chase Novak. Alex and Leslie are at the end of the line as far as having a baby, and they come across a very experimental procedure that they decide to try as a last resort. Leslie ends up pregnant with twins, but she pays a steep price. So I initially read this a while ago, like years ago, and remember loving it, but I can't say the same for the reread. A lot of this book was kind of with the kids when they're older and they're like on the run, so it's like the focus got lost a little bit. I was wanting like that really good eerie horror story, which I think would have taken place if the story was just within this household. But yeah. Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Okay, so I have to admit that when I first picked this up, I didn't even read the synopsis. I saw the tagline that said it was Titanic meets The Shining, and I was like, yep, sold, I'm buying it. And I would say that is a fairly accurate description. This is about Claire and her salvage crew, who pick up a distress signal from a ship that vanished years ago. They decide to check it out, a decision that turns out to be deadly. So, this is told in alternating perspectives. It's like the current Claire trying to explain what happened, and then the present Claire, and then like the past Claire, where she's like experiencing it firsthand. So, it was pretty exciting and creepy, like, up until a point. And then, like, company politics got involved and things went south, and it just wasn't as enjoyable. I think I would have loved it far more if we got more content on the actual ship. Because I think that point was kind of interesting. I just wish they would have played that out a little bit. Someone Like Me by M.R. Carey. Okay, I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I'm going to read the synopsis. Liz Kendall wouldn't hurt a fly. Even when times get tough, she's devoted to bringing up her 2 kids in a loving home. But there's another side to Liz. Love her or hate her, there are 2 sides to every story. So this was hands down my favorite book of the month, and it's really unlike anything I've read before. It's kind of like this psychological thriller with possession horror elements, kind of. But it's almost like you're actively participating in the possession, if that makes sense. It's very trippy, and all of the point of views I felt were necessary, and it really added to the story and kind of helped with that psychological part, because you read from a perspective and then you read from somebody else's perspective, and it's like, who's telling the truth, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, like what's going on, right? It really kind of helped to like mess with your mind a little more. And I think had there only been one point of view, you probably wouldn't have gotten that across. So that was pretty cool. And, the ending was pretty explosive and very satisfying. Sundial by Katrina Ward is about Rob, who returns to Sundial, a town she grew up in and a place she never thought she'd return to. She brings her daughter Callie with her in hopes of saving her from a family fate. But the past comes back, as it always does. So I really liked this. It was a good mix of current and past, and my God, there's some messed up shit in here. I will say, if you're triggered by animal violence, this is probably not a good one to read. But it did have a nice mix of like supernatural elements with like just regular current real domestic violence. So it was a pretty good story. There was a lot kind of happening, but you were able to follow everything. And the ending was not what I was expecting, and it was great. Severed by Frances Larson. This is a nonfiction book about the history of severed heads. Like, really, that's what this book is about. So I was surprisingly pretty upset reading this. Science is always my favorite subject, and I will absolutely defend it. And I understand the importance scientifically with heads, but how we have come about those heads was gruesome and dark, and that's the upsetting part. Plus, I'm still in awe over the fact that a severed head could be such a sought-after item. Like, what a thing to collect. And lastly is The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. I honestly don't even know how to sum this book up. I guess I would say this is about Vincent and her marriage to Jonathan, who ends up causing chaos and ruin to people's lives when he's arrested for running a Ponzi scheme. There's lots of little side plots, and it kind of weaves through time and different point of views at various points in time, and how one thing impacts another. The storyline was interesting, but I was feeling very what's the point? Where is this going? And I know I just said this is about when one thing impacts another, but sometimes it's hard to follow what that impact is, or why we're learning about that. And then some of the verbiage in the chapter endings were just kind of frustrating. You get little clips so-and-so walked right, but in another time he walked left, and then the chapter would end. Why did he go left? Tell me. I must know. Yeah. But all in all, not bad. Would I read another book by Emily St. John Mandel? Why, yes. Yes, I would. Did I, in fact, read another book by Emily St. John Mandel in May? Why, yes. Yes, I did. Sea of Tranquility would be that book. Which, can we just take a minute and appreciate this beautiful edition? I got this from a bookstore called Blackwell's, which is like over in the UK. So this was like their special edition. It was very cool. I love the little added sparkles on the cover and the little sprayed edges. Oh, gorgeous. Did I think the content was just as gorgeous? Not quite. Okay, so my friend had said that a lot of people were saying to read The Glass Hotel before this one, which is why I read The Glass Hotel, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's not like a series, but there is definite character crossover, and had I have not read The Glass Hotel, I would be very lost. This book also has a lot more time travel than the other book did. There's a lot more like ripple effects with decisions and how that impacts like future lives and whatnot. Interesting, but not quite my thing, I think. Again, I was very like, where are we going with this? What journey am I on? So yeah, very interesting though. All right, we are down to the last 5 books. And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin is about Spence, who is living in a rehabilitation facility following a monster plague. He decides to escape with a new inmate, determined to find her survival crew, but things are not quite what they used to be in the world. So this was a pretty short horror novella, and the monsters did make my heart happy. I do love me some good monsters. There were sort of like zombie-like monsters, which I can also appreciate because it wasn't like a full-on zombie novella. And I thought it was interesting that we were kind of in the point of view of someone that we couldn't tell if they were infected or not. You know, when you're first reading it, you're kind of just assuming that this person does not want to be like out in the world where these monstery things are. But then like some stuff happens, some conversation happens, and you're kind of left to wonder like, are they the infected and they're being kept from the outside world? Like, it's kind of this dizzying effect, another one that kind of messes with your head. And I freaking love this cover, and there is a scene in the book that goes with the cover that's freaking amazing. Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. Margot decides to run away to visit her grandmother, someone who her mother always warned her about. Upon her arrival, she comes across a fire on the farm, which ends up being like the start to a very interesting mystery. I don't know about this one. Part of me was like, oh yeah, I'm 100% down for this. And the other part of me wanted to like roll my eyes and just wish I never had picked it up. I think my problem was that the ending was interesting, but the getting there was a tough ride. There was a lot still, how do I explain it? Like, left to be unsaid. You still had a lot of questions. And then, like, like, you kind of thought that's what was happening, but you weren't sure. And, you know, with young adult novels, there's always, like, you know, the character never quite gets the information because everybody thinks they're too young to understand and they're not old enough for the truth, and it's very upsetting. And there's a lot of that in this book. So, you know, it had some good spots. It just wasn't quite enough. Wasn't quite my jam. You know what I mean? Mastodon by Steve Stredd is about Tyler Burton, who decides to go hiking in the Rocky Mountains in an isolated place that even officials won't venture into. He is searching for his father, who recently went missing in the area, on the anniversary of his mother's disappearance in the same area. So, again, kind of a shorter horror novel. I will say this definitely made me think twice about hiking somewhere remote. I mean, not that I would ever go hiking. But if I did, I would definitely look out for this place. I really enjoyed Steve's writing, and I know he's got a bunch of books published, so I will definitely be picking up more of his work. And again, this is just a book full of good monstery, messed up shit. So if that's your jam, this one's for you. Like a Sister by Kelly Garrett is about Lena, who is working to uncover who murdered her half-sister Desiree. But there are people who don't want the truth revealed and will do anything to stop Lena. This was an okay mystery. I was surprised at the final, whodunit reveal, and it did do a good job at keeping me guessing, but I felt like the story dragged in some areas. There were some reveals that seemed big at the time, but then nothing came of it later. The characters kind of got past it, which I was kind of surprised about. And, it was like things were starting to pick up pace, and then all of a sudden, the big showdown happened, and then it ended. I felt like some of that tension that we had in the latter part of the book would have been better suited earlier in the book. But again, not a bad mystery. And last book to talk about is Seven Deadly Shadows by Courtney Alameda in Matani. Ooh, I hope I'm saying that right. This is about Kira, who learns that a demon king will rise at the next blood moon to hunt down an ancient relic and bring the world to an end. So she bands together with some unlikely heroes to fight and stop the demon king. I really enjoyed this book and consumed it so quickly. I loved the Japanese folklore kind of mixed with this high fantasy element. It created this really unique setting and storyline. And, of course, as we have picked up on in this wrap-up video, I loved me the good monster fight scenes. I did happen to listen to this one on audio along with physically reading the book, which I think was a really good reading experience. With it being Japanese folklore, there's a lot of Japanese language and, names and stuff that it was nice to be able to hear that while reading it. And of course, there's some songs and kind of that sing-songy voice with the Japanese language just really added to the reading experience. I really felt like I was kind of there. So I highly recommend doing that. All right, that's everything I read for the month of May. On to June. Can you believe we're coming to the halfway point in the year? So freaking crazy. Drop a comment below and let me know how your May reading went. What was your favorite book of the month? Or maybe what was the most surprising book that you read this month? Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.